Alright, you guys, now that we're coming to the end, I am beginning to wrap it up on a lot of the games that came out of 2023, getting some final playthroughs in and beating some games that I didn't get a chance to actually beat yet. One of the games that I want to revisit a lot was Baldur's Gate 3. And now that we're coming up to Game of the Year, Game of the Awards, Game of the Game Awards, Game of the Year season, all that stuff, I kind of wanted to give Baldur's Gate 3 another fair shake as I had played it earlier in the year, like prior, like pretty much when it came out. And I didn't really have the best first impressions of the game, and I kind of cut it short as there was other games coming out, and there was not a lot compelling me to continue to play Baldur's Gate 3. So I kind of just wanted to come back to it, play more, figure out if there's maybe more to the game that I didn't really get in the first couple hours. Because again, this is a huge game, and even though I have put like 10 hours into this game, which for a lot of other games is a sufficient enough time to really get a first impressions, I don't really think I got a fair idea of what Baldur's Gate 3 has to offer. As like the first hour was spent in character creation, the first 2 hours was spent like tutorial, and then like the rest of the time was spent trying to figure out what this game is. So even though I put in, actually I don't think I put in like 15 hours into this game, but with my first impressions. Um, but now that I revisit the game, I put in another 15 hours. So I'm currently at 30 hours in Baldur's Gate 3. And I do have some opinions, some takes, some ideas on what Baldur's Gate 3 is for me. Again, obviously, I'm nowhere near completion in this game, nor do I think I'll probably ever complete this game, just because it's so huge and it's such like large in scope that I'd be curious to see how far I could really get into it. But yeah, now that I put more time into it, I wanted to give just a quick video on some of the thoughts that I have of this game up till this point. Again, this is far from a review. This is, not really an impressions video. This is just 5 opinions, 5 takes, 5 whatever you want to call them on what I think of Baldur's Gate 3. Do me a favor and like this video. If you guys like this video, please consider subscribing as that does help us out a lot. Thank you very much. And without wasting any more time, let's get into my very first take of Baldur's Gate 3. And that is, this game is very comical. And I think humor is a game that is hard to pull off in gaming, specifically in like the high fantasy RPG level, just because everyone is speaking in certain ways, and a lot of times their jokes can go over people's heads. But I think this game, because it is very like scenario based, because it definitely plays into the path that you take, a lot of the unexpectedness of this game, some of the character dialogue is really, really funny. I think they really try to be lighthearted. They don't take themselves too seriously a lot of the times. And it does well by playing on the unexpectedness of what, the player doesn't know exactly what's going to happen, right? You say a dialogue and you have no idea what the response is going to be. You have no idea what kind of branch or path is going to open up. And some of the paths and branches are just so, like, hysterical, especially, like, when you put in the context of the situation. So I do really, really appreciate the comic factor of this game, and I think Baldur's Gate 3 does a really good job of just being humorous. So my very first opinion on this game is it is funny. My next opinion on Baldur's Gate 3 is regarding the characters. And this is strange for a game that has so many things going for it, narrative speaking. One of the things that doesn't do it for me is the characters per se. There's not a specific character that I could look at and say, that's my guy or that's my girl or that's the person I want to get behind. And this is, again, very subjective, as a lot of people can gravitate towards Shadowheart, or some people gravitate towards Asterion, obviously. Um, for me personally, I haven't met a character specifically that I love to engage with more. I don't have a person that I'm rooting for, a person that I side with. I'm kind of just like invested in the situations more so than any specific character or seeing their story play out. A lot of times when they stop to talk to me, I'm not interested in it, and I kind of just like rush through the dialogue because a lot of it just ruins pacing for me, as I'd be in a situation trying to figure something else out, and then Shadowheart will stop and start staring off into the distance, and you're like, what are you doing, Shadowheart? And she's like, don't worry about it or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to worry about it because I just generally don't care about your story or your narrative. So I think for a game that relies so heavily on having a lot of characters with very deep stories and a lot of depth to them, it is interesting that I don't gravitate towards any one of these characters. And I think that is large part due to the fact there is so many that I don't think I'd spend enough time diving into one character over another. More so, I kind of just like stop and chat with them every now and again. But yeah, again, I guess this opinion is just like there is, I guess, maybe too many characters or just not enough characters for me to like necessarily care about. Again, this is just my opinion, my take, but yeah, I'm not digging the characters. My next opinion, my next take, my next whatever thought on this game, kind of goes back to an earlier contention I had with this game, as I didn't really necessarily love the combat system. I think it was paced awkwardly. Um, it's a weird turn-based strategy mix where it feels kind of like a strategy game, but it also feels like a turn-based RPG. There's definitely a lot going on as far as so many menus, so much environmental things, a lot of things that you kind of have to play with and learn how to figure out. Whether it be like seeing how far an enemy can attack you, how much movement you have, placing yourself smartly and strategically, and utilizing your environment. There was a lot to grasp, and it took kind of a long time for me to really get into the combat system. But now that I've played with it a lot more, I definitely find a lot of things reviewing about it. I find a lot of things that I absolutely love about this combat system. I love that sometimes I could be completely outnumbered or completely outleveled, but if I play smart enough, if I use my environments, if I use my strategies and my weapons, and really utilize my character, my parties, then there's a lot I'm surprised that could actually get done in the combat system as far as defeating people when I'm outnumbered, defeating people when I'm outleveled, and really just using the world that they give me and the tools that they give me as a player to really strategize around the enemies. I think there's a lot in this combat system that is left to be desired. As at least again, I'm playing on PlayStation 5, and this game is very much built for a PC. So there's a lot as far as pacing that I feel like would go a lot faster if I was on PC. That being said, I'm not there, so yeah, pacing is still awkward, and there is still some like situations that I feel like are a little unfair. But overall, if I play my cards right, if I consider the situation, if I consider all my options, then I'm very very surprised with how much I could get done in this combat system, and I'm starting to really, really like it. I'm starting to really grow on the combat system, and overall, I think it is a huge standout in this game. So yeah, my opinion on this one is just the combat system is really, really deep, and if you take the time to learn it, you'll have tons more fun playing it. My next take on this game revolves the dice. The die roll, I think, is fun. I feel like it adds a little bit of spice. It adds a little, randomness to some of the conversation that I'm having with characters, whether I'm trying to persuade them or intimidate them. I think it also adds like kind of a fear factor that once you try to intimidate somebody and you find out that it's like 20, you gotta get a die roll of 20, and you just like almost no way you're gonna get it done. You start to like I guess panic or like trying to figure out an alternative. Okay, if this person's gonna fight me, if this doesn't work, how am I gonna fight them? What level might they be on, because you don't know a person's level until you start fighting them, and then you find out they're level like 40 and you're still at level 5. There's a lot, I think, to the randomness of the die roll that definitely adds to the risk factor of your conversations, as well as the fact that I really like that you can kind of persuade almost anyone to do anything. I like that you can intimidate people, or you have these different routes that you can take to avoiding conflict or even just like getting stuff your way. I ran into like a bunch of like I guess ogres they were, and they really wanted to fight me, but then I ended up persuading them not to fight me and instead joining me later. So stuff like that I feel like, again, because of the unpredictable nature of Baldur's Gate 3 and the narrative and the branching like paths you could take, it is really exciting to see what might play out, whether I might end up fighting people or whether I might just end up making friends. You never really know, and I think that's kind of the magic of the whole narrative piece of the whole conversation of this game, and I really really do love that. My final take on this game, my final opinion on this game, kind of goes back to my first impressions video that me and my wife did a while ago, and that is that this game is very very hard to get into if you're not, again, into this style of game. Its onboarding process is very very difficult. Its pacing just isn't there, and I think there's a lot of ideas in this game that if you're not used to this style of RPG, it'll definitely throw you off and take a really long time for you to get into it. Again, I'm like 30 hours into the game, and there's a lot that I understand of it now, and there's a lot that I can find enjoyable now that I understand more of the game. But that's 30 hours in, and granted, it didn't take me 30 hours to figure out this game, right? It took me probably like maybe 18 to really get a good grasp of it. And even then, there's always things changing. There's always things that are going to make the game very different opposed to when I originally started playing it. And it does reward you for learning more about this game. With that being said, you have to be willing to learn about this game, learn about the world, the characters, the mechanics. Learn some Dungeons and Dragons stuff as far as classes and roles. You might have started the game as like a sorcerer like me, and then halfway through your playthrough, figure out you don't really like playing a sorcerer. You wish you went a way of like a warrior or something. So I think as far as like getting new players into the game, I think it is hard. I think I can see a lot of people picking this game up based off the hype, like I did, and then kind of not necessarily regretting it, but being like, "Whoa, I didn't expect it to be this in depth. I didn't expect it to be this RPG." You know, and that's all fine and well, and that's not a knock towards this game by any means, as this game rewards those who dive deep into the mechanics, dive deep into the character narratives, dive deep into the world and what this game is. It does take a long time though for that to set in, and you can make a lot of mistakes on your way there that you might regret a lot, and you might end up having to restart it or whatever. But overall, I think this game's pacing and onboarding system is really really hard for a newcomer to come into it, as I was kind of put off a little bit by it. Again, as I got more dedicated and spent more time with it, I definitely find it more rewarding and more enjoyable now, but it did take a long time for me to get to that point, and it's a lot of time that I don't think a lot of people would want to put into a game. Um, Overall, though, this game is really, really fun. It is really, really impressive what Larry and the Studios was able to do with this game, and I absolutely do love my time. Again, I don't know how long or how far I'll get into this game. I do plan on playing it like off and on as like other in between like other game releases. Um, but overall, I am enjoying my time. That does end all my opinions on Baldur's Gate 3. However, if I ever change my opinions or end up with more opinions later on, I will make another video, as this is a large game. But yeah, 30 hours in, this is kind of like where I'm sitting at with the game. I do plan on playing more of it and look forward to this game, surprising me more. With all that being said, I'm going to leave it at that. Let me know down below in the comment section if you guys disagree, agree, or think I'm ugly. It's, kind of what the comment section is there for. Anyways, you guys, I'll see you guys on the next video. Remember to go out there, have some fun, and enjoy your day.